Hey guys, hope you're all well. Yeah, my new album's out. This is my past. It talks about the storm from birth up until now. I've tried to do it in order of when things happened, and each track roughly follows 5 years of my life, each one. So I thought I'd talk through the tracks now. I will do separate small videos per track when I get a chance, but for now I'm going to upload the full album and this video talking about it all. I've got some notes, so if I look down, I'm not being ignorant. There's just so much to talk about. So, the first track, Before the Storm. This is really just introducing it, saying it's about my past. It's not pretty, it's heavy, but all through it is me owning what I did. I explained some situations that came about, not always by my own hand, but they were things that shaped me. And out of respect, there are certain parts of it that I will talk about, but I won't go into details, because all of this is about me. So I don't want to sort of take it away by talking about what others did, if that makes sense. This was a hard album to write, I'm not going to lie. It took so much out of me, mentally, physically, emotionally, everything. But you've heard my first album, This Is Me. That's talking about recovery, choices, making changes. And I needed to explain why that album came, because otherwise there's no understanding. So yeah, that's the first track. Right, the second track, Stormborn, and this is where now I've had chance to look back, where I could say my storm, my darkness, my struggles started. And I think it started more or less from birth. So I've got to check my notes. When I was a few months old, I was always led to believe about 6 months, about having spoke to someone else who was involved with it. They reckon it was slightly different, so I'm going to go on what I'd always grew up being told. So yeah, I had my leg broke in 3 places. That's what I've grown up knowing, that's what I grew up knowing. So that was the first thing that I ended up in care. A few months later I went back, and again, from what I've been told, what I've grown up knowing, I was then neglected, which put me back into care. And this was the first time, and it's great that I've still got a relationship with my foster parents, and we've had conversations about how I was when I was young, and this was the first time they said, you know, when you came back to us, you were hiding food, you were fighting with other kids that were in care or came to visit. This was the first part. Now I've had a chance to look back, where I was in survival mode, fight. But yeah, so this is the start of the storm. And again, I think I've got to say, everything that happened throughout my life it's only now that I've had chance to reflect and look back at everything that happened. And again, I'm not blaming anyone, but I've had to look at what my actions did and others did. And for me, I had to make peace with what others did, because I can't change that. I can't change how they think about it or feel about it now. I can only deal with me and my feelings and what I want. Anyway, so yeah, that's Stormborn. The next one, we're coming up to primary school, or in some places to do the 3-tier, it's first school. The Boy They Couldn't Tame. And I remember quite a bit so well. I remember going in, still fighting, still, I guess, protecting myself, survival. I didn't know it at the time. And, you know, you'd hear teachers talking, other kids talking. No one ever seemed to try and understand me. No one seemed to take the time to find out what was going on. I remember in reception class or year 1, the first person I hit, like properly, and I own it, and I was stupid. It was over something so stupid. I want to swear, but I'm not going to. And I remember the consequences. I then remember, after doing it, being sat outside the headmaster's office with my own little desk out there and a chair until my parents came to pick me up. But anyway, and then not long after that, maybe a few months, a year at the max, I was that bad that at lunch times I was sent home for lunch. I wasn't allowed to stay in school. I remember in year 2 putting Play-Doh in someone's hair. Don't know why. I really don't. But this is what I mean. I look back and upon reflection, I was always trying to, I guess, push people away, hurt people before they hurt me. It was all about survival. I was classed as a bully. And I look back and sometimes I think maybe I was, but was there more to it? Now I've had chance to really reflect. Was I actually just one of these kids who bullied, or was I one of these kids just fighting? I never hid. That was one thing. Whether it was negatively or positive, I was always there. I always made myself known. But that again was part of my survival. Okay, I'll admit, you know, even today I like kind of being known by everyone, but now it's obviously I want to be known for the right reasons. So yeah, that was Boy They Couldn't Tame. The next one, which is where my anger and aggression grew a lot, Brick in Hand. And now we're into high school. In year 7, I remember, and this is where the title came from, I remember throwing a brick at someone. But we'll go on to that in a minute. The track starts in the first week, and on the 3rd day of school, I remember getting into a bit of a fight, pinning someone to the floor. I can remember the kid's name, I can remember the kid's face. It's strange what is so vivid in your mind. Then a few months later, that's where I said someone made a comment and I threw a brick at them. Luckily, it missed. But obviously, by this point, I'd already been seen by the teachers as he's trouble, he's a problem. I was already labelled. At the time, I think I kind of was like, well, it's my ADHD. I'd been diagnosed with ADHD. But again, upon reflection now, I don't think it was. I think it was just a kid back then fighting, surviving, trying to protect himself, although he didn't need to. And I mean, you know, teenage years, they're hard. I really didn't know how to express myself, which probably didn't help. The only thing I could express was anger, and I did. Again, I'm talking about all of these things now, and I am sorry for all the things I've done. But the reason I want to talk about it all is if it just helps one person to realise you can go through all this, but you can change. Also in high school, probably around year 10 or 11, I'm leaning towards year 10, was my first time of self-harm. It sounds ridiculous now, but it is still self-harm. I remember getting a blade from a sharpener and running across my knuckles quite a few times. So yeah, that was the first bit of self-harm. But then, whilst I was in high school, there was some light, some hope, which is what the next track is about, and this one is so dear to my heart. If I had to choose one of my songs to keep and get rid of all the rest, this is the one I'm keeping. Sisters in the Chaos. This is about three girls who possibly late year 9, early year 10, we got talking. I remember biting one of them. Don't ask why. I think, again, upon reflection, it was me testing them. Will you stay? If you see the worst part of me, will you stay? Anyway, they did. And it became, I saw them as sisters. No matter what happened, we had each other's backs. Even if we stopped talking. And, you know, all friends fall out every so often. That's normal. But even if we're going through that stage, if something came up and we needed each other, we were there. And I've got to throw it out there. And some people say it's too strong a feeling, but I don't think it is. I love those three girls the same now as I did back then. Although our lives have gone our separate ways, one I don't speak to at all. The other two I've got on social media, and I've got phone numbers. So, you know, we do still check in with each other now. But what they gave me through high school was more than anything. We laughed, we cried, we held each other. They didn't ask for anything. I didn't ask them to either, I guess. But what they never realised was what was going on in my head and what I was dealing with. but they stuck around and they showed me I was worth more than I thought. I could go on for hours on this track, and what those girls meant to me. But yeah, I will do separate videos on each track at a later date, so I'll possibly go into more details then. Anyway, right. The next track, Cheap Beer and Empty Nights. This is where I was 16. I started going out every night. I started drinking. I started smoking. Some days I do miss those times. There were things that, again, were glimpses of light in those times, but I'll go back to them in a second. At this stage, I was obviously, again, upon reflection, trying to sort of drown everything out, feel numb or feel something different. I remember it got that bad the one night. I hadn't had a drink all day. And I went out and I had 100 pence in 1 pennies. And I remember going to a corner shop. Their cheapest beer or cider was £1. And I gave them 100 pennies just so I could have a drink. I'd started stealing money to fund my drink or my fags. I'd really sort of gone off the rails at this point. I was getting involved with the wrong crowds when I was hanging around town, drinking. Back then, I thought they were brilliant. And individually, I guess, you know, they were. But when we were all together, yeah, it probably wasn't good. But I mentioned earlier about little bits of light whilst out drinking. And I think this is what I miss the most about going out drinking. There was this one friend who I think was going through his own stuff at the time. But anyway, I remember there was some nights where it would just be us two. We'd get some alcohol. We'd go up to a field, strangely, next to the woods, or forest, however you phrase it, where we lived. And we'd sit in that field, we'd have a drink, and then partway through the night, the tunes would come on the phones. One song I really, really remember clearly, Sunday Morning Coming Down. Not the original, but sung by Johnny Cash. And we'd stick that on. And he used to play guitar. He still does, actually. And he'd pretend to be there on the guitar. I'd be the one singing, and we'd pretend to be doing a live gig to the whole of the town. It was stupid. I can't sing. But it was so much fun, and it holds so much fond memories with that. So I had to bring that up with this track. But yeah. And then the next track, 18 with a Baby on the Way. This, I was 17. I met someone. We very quickly ended up having a daughter, my eldest. It was the first time I felt needed, and I guess wanted. It's the first time that I felt the storm go, or I thought it had gone. but it just died down temporarily. It was something real. I said I'd always be there for my kids, and I have been. It's about that first time becoming a parent, and what it meant to me. And I love all my kids, but obviously my eldest was the one that made me a dad first. Yeah, it was, I want to say it was a shock. I don't think at the time it was. I'd fallen in love with someone and it just felt right. But yeah, you know, I mean, I was still a kid myself at that time. But I grabbed it with both hands. This is what I wanted. And I was always going to be there. So, the next song, 4 months later. This is very personal. And this is one of those songs that I want to keep respectful. So I'm just going to talk about my feelings at the time. I'm not going to go into details of what happened, but something happened 4 months after my daughter was born that brought the storm back, and it hit me harder than I thought it could. Although I'd lived in a storm for years, when it came back with vengeance. I still tried to be a dad. I still tried to be a good boyfriend. I still loved, but the trust had gone. So yeah, listen to it, see what you make of it. I'm usually quite open, and I will talk about things, especially in private, but there are certain things that I won't fully share with everyone, not to protect me at all. I'm an open book, but to protect others. Anyway, the next track, Cable Ties and Silent Screams. This was my first suicide attempt, hence the cable ties. They were what I used and tightened around my neck. There I was roughly 25. At the time, I'd been going through a lot of arguments with people close to me. I always felt I wasn't enough, and no matter what I did, that was never enough. And then in one of the arguments then, there was talk of someone walking away. And that's where the rejection and the abandonment issues that I've had since what happened, like with my adoption and everything, surfaced again. And inside I was screaming and I didn't know what to do, and that's where this first suicide attempt came from. I've been judged by a couple of people who know what had gone on and everything, that it was my way of trying to trap someone, keep them close. But it wasn't. It really wasn't. It was, I don't know what to do. I really don't. How do I live like this? How do I carry on? Everything plus all the storm and fire in my belly already. But yeah, so this was a hard track. And again, I'm not blaming anyone. I should have handled things differently. Unfortunately, at the time, I don't think I was really in the right place to handle things. But again, that's on me. But yeah, anyway. The next track, 4 Days Later. Again, this is quite personal. It's talking about a breakup, struggling with it. I think because I tried to stay living in it where I'd been building a life, where I had my kids, there was a spare room which I took, and I tried to stay there. I think because I didn't cope, I didn't deal with it, I didn't start healing or reflecting, it made it a lot harder when people move on. I don't expect anyone to stand still. But when people around you move on and you're stuck in that place, it's really hard. And I guess at the time I felt like all my hopes and dreams that I built had gone. My life had collapsed, or that's how it was for me. And again, it's just another layer added to this storm that I needed to deal with, I guess. And I think, you know, if I'd had one or two things in life, I think I could have been okay. But I guess for me, and now upon reflection, it felt like there was something new all the time. Anyway, moving on. Caution. This was me owning my mistakes, where I let my anger get the best of me. This was not long after the breakup, so I was still dealing with that. And all other things that had gone on since then. There were still arguments. And I'm not going to sugarcoat her, you know, I grabbed her. There's no point me sugarcoating it or lying. I hold my hands up. I held my hands up then, I hold my hands up now. But I got arrested. I got a caution, which stayed on my file for 6 years, which really held me back. So it was really a lesson over a long period of time. But this again is something else where I use it as an example. We make mistakes. If we own it, we can learn from it, we can grow from it. If we don't, then it just eats away at us. So, yeah, I don't think there's much more I can say to her. Shouldn't have done it. And I'll talk later about a track, the bonus track later. But I sent this bonus track to the person I grabbed at the time. And they liked it. And that was me. And I'm sure I said sorry years ago. But I wanted to make sure they knew that I own it, that I'm sorry. And it's great, especially at the minute. I have got a really good relationship with this person. You know, it's nothing more than a friendship, but it's the way it should be, and it makes life so much more simple, having this type of relationship. There's no expectations, there's no arguments, just open and honest. Anyway, now we are on to the two hardest tracks that I had to write. And again, I'm not sugarcoating anything. I'm not hiding anything. Never have, never will. Hands I wish I'd never raised. This was a song about my children. I obviously had a lot to deal with, and I struggled with that. My mental health, I struggled. And I wasn't always the best dad. I hold my hands up to that. I've said things, I've done things, I've reacted in ways that I shouldn't have. And I own that. I look back now, and I've said before that I'd make changes, but I wasn't in the right place to do that, whereas now I have. And as much as the mistakes I've made and how I've made my kids feel at times, they are seeing the changes, they're seeing the benefits. And my relationship with 4 of them is amazing. One in particular right now. And it's just stupid things. Sitting there for 5 minutes in the evening talking about your day. Whereas it used to be, and I know it could have been an age thing being teenage, when you ask how was your day, it was fine. That was it. Whereas now we're having proper conversations. She is trusting me with things that she doesn't have to. But I've built that trust. So what I'm saying is, yes, this track is heavy. And you can make mistakes. Just don't sit there. It does get better. And I hope one day, although a couple of my kids have already heard my album, that they have some understanding, some realisation that I was trying, but I was dealing with things and I reacted the wrong ways. And again, they're mentioned in my song later, saying sorry. But I think I've already given them the biggest sorry by making changes and being a better person. Anyway, the next track, The Man I Didn't Want to Be. This references one of my children. Again, I don't want to sugarcoat, I'm not hiding, where she got to a point where she felt she didn't want to be around me. I think there was a lot more to it than just the way I've been. But that's not for here. At this point where she said she didn't want to be around a man like me, that was that switch being flicked. That instead of saying I'm gonna change, it was a switch that made me change. it held up a mirror for me to see where I was, what I'd become, what I'd been going through. And that was the switch that I realised what I needed to do. And I've done it. And that's why This Is Me album is the recovery, the change, and all of that. That is where that started. And as much as I hate what happened, part of me is glad it happened, because I think without that I'd still be living in some sort of denial. But yeah, I can't think what else I want to say with that, so we'll leave it at that for that song. Next track is After the Storm. This is really just saying, it's like an outro, just explaining, this is what I came from. I'm not sugarcoating it, I'm not hiding it. And this is why the change came about, and why I've been documenting stuff and talking on these videos, and why This Is Me album came about. It's only something short, so I won't say too much about it. And then finally, the bonus track, To Those I Hurt in a Storm. This is my apology song. This is me saying sorry. This is me standing here in front of you. No disguise. Just me. Being completely honest. And it's not just for my kids, for their mum, for my family. It's for anyone who I have met through life, anyone I've hurt. It's me just saying sorry. It's also recognising that although I'm saying sorry, everyone who has been in my life, whether I've hurt them, whether they've been good to me, whether I've been good to them, whether they've walked away, whether they've stayed, they've all taught me some sort of lesson. So, yeah. Anyway, join me after the storm, 'cause storms end.